This is part 3. To recap, 1,000 years in the future, everyone you know lives deep underground in a single interconnected city that spans all the way across the continental United States. The surface level was long ago abandoned after nuclear winter, overwhelming smog, and marauding gangs of cannibals. On your 19th birthday, thereby making this a YA dystopia, you find an open elevator shaft that goes all the way up to level 000, the surface level. You've never been to the surface, but you decide to give it a shot, risking instant death by radiation by opening up the door to the surface after climbing up 214 stories with nothing more than a rope and a grappling hook. As you get to the top, you look down to see love interest 1, a goth underworlder like yourself named Soot, who despite being terrified of heights followed you all the way up silently because he is a silent smolder-er on the basis that, like you, he is an orphan who grew up with you in the cage, which is needlessly capitalized throughout the story and was a sort of wrestling slave school / orphanage to prepare people for gladiatorial combat. When Soot helps you pry open the door to the surface, his pectoral muscles rippling because of his cage training, you realize it's nothing like what you were told. It's a paradise. It's not overcrowded. The air is clean. There's a river. There's love interest 2, a jockey, beautiful Richard, so named because he is rich, and you see the sun. It turns out that President Trump XIV is keeping everyone in the underworld down there to make room for the elite Surfaceworlders, and you, as an Underworlder and dissident, don't belong. But Richard, now made suddenly aware of the plight of the underworld, hides you and Soot away in the attic of his mansion where you plot revolution. How will you seek the fall of President Trump XIV and the return of your people to the surface world? Okay. Remember, we are 14,452 words into this story, okay? So it is long, okay? You should watch episode 1 and episode 2, which are linked below, both of them. But I'm going to try to catch you up as quickly as I can, okay? And so we will begin. So first, you go up there. So let's just break down who your characters are. So first you have, sorry, I have to scroll back. It takes a while. I shouldn't have scrolled all the way down. It was an error. Okay, so first in terms of the people. So your name is Susan because you are a Mary Sue. You are specifically Susan Gorbachev. You are the daughter of Grigory Gorbachev. Grigory Gorbachev is the leader of the Underworld, okay? He is the dictator of the Underworld, okay? Now there's Soot. Soot is your love interest. We don't need to go into him right now. Then there's Richard. Richard is your other love interest, but he is Richard of the upper world. He is Richard, and his father, Senator Kraus Strauss, okay, is one of the most important people of the second U.S. government, okay, not the first U.S. government. It's very different than the current U.S. government, even though the president's name is President Trump. So that's Senator Kraus Strauss. Senator Kraus Strauss is a lot of the reason that Grigory Gorbachev managed to take power, that your father, Grigory Gorbachev, managed to take power, right? So when we talk about Grigory Gorbachev, okay, Grigory Gorbachev's rival that he took over from was the father of Cordelia Minister. Okay, Cordelia Minister is the leader of the cage. Okay, she controls the cage. And in terms of the people who are at the cage, there's also another person who's important. His name is Brad Buttonsworth. Vaguely important, not that important. Brad Buttonsworth is likely, if Grigory Gorbachev were to die today, to take over for Grigory Gorbachev. Why? Well, because Grigory Gorbachev has 2 children. He has you, Susan Gorbachev, but no one knows that you're Susan Gorbachev. They just know you as Susan, as being this random orphan child who had been taken by Cordelia Minister. Cordelia Minister knows because Cordelia Minister captured or rather Cordelia's father captured your mother, who was sort of in line in the trajectory towards becoming the queen as Grigory Gorbachev worked to take over the underworld. But you specifically were born in this captive state, and then Cordelia Minister wanted to keep an eye on you, and so as she pivoted herself and semi-betrayed her father in order to be able to herself be the leader of the Minister family, because her older brother had originally been the next leader of the Minister family, but she killed her older brother, or rather, she didn't kill her older brother, but instead had Grigory Gorbachev kill her older brother in order to take power. So that's sort of your trajectory. So right now, Brad Buttonsworth is the one who's most likely to take over if Grigory Gorbachev were to die tomorrow, which is part of the reason that Cordelia is keeping him in line and working with him at the cage match context, right? Remember, the cage is sort of this complicated thing politically, because it is simultaneously the way that Grigory Gorbachev goes about killing most of his dissidents, but it is also something that is controlled directly by Cordelia Minister. Cordelia Minister being someone who is loyal to Grigory Gorbachev, but also someone who is the daughter, or at least seemingly loyal to Grigory Gorbachev, but also the daughter of the previous leader of this area, which is to say her father, right? So that's that guy. Then there's Fire Machine. Fire Machine is a third dissident. Fire Machine is not either part of the Minister family, nor is he part of the Gorbachev family. He is instead this third group of dissidents who are trying to build some sort of something. And so when you think about the way that the cage works, there's two different groups of people who live in the cage. There's the children of the cage, that's you. There's the people who grew up basically since birth as orphans who have been working as part of the cage since they were children and have been preparing for their gladiatorial combat. And there's also the settlers of the cage, right? The settlers of the cage are ruled over by Fire Machine. He's their trainer. Brad Buttonsworth is the trainer for the children of the cage. Fire Machine has an interesting history because he himself was a settler of the cage. So how do you become a settler of the cage? Well, you get there because you are basically being sentenced to death, essentially, right? The goal of these fights is that they're supposed to be basically pretty rigged, and that the expectation is the children of the cage are going to win most of these fights, although it be not all of them. But eventually, if you are a settler of the cage, the overwhelming likelihood is that you're going to die. Now, to be clear, also the overwhelming likelihood is that you're going to die if you are the children of the cage. But that's the basic theory in terms of who Fire Machine is and how he got there. So he used to be the leader of one of the dissident groups. But then he was extremely successful as a settler of the cage and won a bunch of fights and became sort of this internationally acclaimed, not internationally, but nationally acclaimed within, because keep in mind, this whole context, they have television, but they don't have internet, right, in the Underworld. And the television networks are very much controlled by Grigory Gorbachev. And so Fire Machine has been doing this sort of covert work within the cage of trying to get information in as all of these different people are being sentenced to death to go be there. And so he's able to, on the basis of that, to sort of build out his network of understanding of how the broader context of the world is. And he's also able to somewhat get out messages because much of this is live television, right? And within the cage, and so therefore he has this sort of context there, and he also has this complicated relationship with Cordelia Minister. Cordelia Minister, of course, sentenced him to fight against all these people, but she also had no choice but to do so. And so there's a sentence in which, he's still alive after all this time, and he's no longer doing difficult fights. He's still fighting against children of the cage occasionally, but very rarely, because he is now one of the favorites, which is not supposed to happen, but he's become one of the favorites of the people, of the public. And so he's doing very little of that. And he's mostly just working on the training. And so he has his own private quarters above. We can show you. This is the map we worked on this previously. This is the map of where everyone lives. So here's here's Fire Machine's quarters right here, directly above the cage right there. So he has his own private quarters. He doesn't live with the rest of the settlers. He doesn't live with any of the children of the cage. I should clarify. When I say children of the cage, I just mean that they were born into the cage. That doesn't mean they're actually literal kids. Some of them are literal kids. Also, some of the settlers are literal kids. Very few of the settlers are literal kids. But for the most part, most of the fighting is actually happening between adults. But anyway, so that's sort of what we're talking about there. Then we have to talk about like the history of what we did in terms of the actual plotting of all of this. So the first thing that happens is you go up, right? You manage to go up the plot begins, right? So you go up and you meet Richard, and Richard is like, wow, holy crap. You also have this dog, Floof. The reason that you went up there in the first place is to protect Floof, because Floof got an injury, and you needed to protect Floof and fix the injury, and you were concerned that he was going to be, you were told that he was going to be going away, and you didn't know where he was going to be going away, and you thought that he was getting put down. Turns out he wasn't being put down. It was actually what was going to happen is that he was going to go work as a guard for President Trump the 14th. Now, to be clear, that is potentially a good thing. If you had known that, you would have had a different reaction, maybe. But it's partially a good thing, but it's also partially a bad thing, because President Trump the 14th, yes, has guard dogs, that's true, but he also has a private cage that is not public, that is not shown on the television screens, where he has fights to the death as well, just for his own personal amusement. He's not a good dude, President Trump the 14th. Very different than current Trump, obviously. So anyway, that's Floof. Floof is this massive dog, and he's very scary. You also have this little sister who's not literally your biological little sister, but it's like emotionally your little sister. Her name is Pout. Okay, so you go up there, you manage to save Floof. You meet up with Richard. Richard is like, holy crap. Floof gets into a fight with a mountain lion, wins the fight with the mountain lion. Then there becomes this knowledge up there. Senator Krauss-Strauss, Richard's father, is not a good dude. He's a bad hombre, and he bullies his son. But anyway, so then after that, I had to snap. Sometimes you just need to snap. You gotta snap. So anyway, after all of that, you manage to go up there, and Richard realizes, holy crap, he's told that the child of Grigory Gorbachev is at large, and we need to find the child of Grigory Gorbachev. And he doesn't realize, and you don't realize, that it's actually you who's the child of Grigory Gorbachev. Instead, he thinks, and Soot thinks, that actually Soot is the son of Grigory Gorbachev, which is wrong. But that's what they think. And so therefore, they're like, holy crap. Well, we're not safe up here in the upper world because we just killed Richard's maid. Oh yeah, also Soot kills Richard's maid. That's not something that we can do up here. So therefore, we're going to have to go down. We have to go somewhere. We have to be safe somewhere. And if it is true that Soot is actually Grigory Gorbachev's son, then that'll be a place that is safe to be within the grasp of Grigory Gorbachev. Now keep in mind, Grigory Gorbachev is a horrible, horrible, horrible person, right? So like you have this sort of mixed emotions of like, well, they're going to, be saved by Grigory Gorbachev. Let's show you how they get there. So this is the map of that component, right? So right now, at this point in this story, you're up here in the surface world up here, right? And so they're going to go all the way down this elevator shaft. Then they're going to start the arduous journey over to the Underworld palace over here. Whereas you are like, well, holy crap, this is all horrible, right? But I'm worried for Pout, right? Pout is in a horrible state. We managed to save Floof, but like this is all this like craziness happening. You're like, wait a second, this is a moment where I could potentially be able to save Pout. I want to save Pout. So what happens is that you come down and they're all like, yeah, the men folk, Richard and Soot are like, yeah, we're gonna go save Pout with you. Then they get to here and they're like, actually, joke's on you. We're going to start the arduous journey over to the Underworld palace. And you're furious at them because like, what the hell? They shouldn't have done that. That's horrible. Also, during this whole thing, there's some undergirding homosexualism that is brewing, but is not being discussed between Richard and Soot, right? And simultaneously, they obviously are very mad at each other because Richard is mad because, obviously his maid was killed by Soot, which is horrible. And also Soot is mad because he doesn't like rich people, and he doesn't like that Richard is like having this he's like, mopey, soft boy, right? And Soot's like, we are killers. We were born and trained to be killers. Because he's a hard boy, That's the difference between them. Anyway, so that's going on between them. Then you're like, okay, I have to go back. I have to save Pout, right? I have to go back to the cage to save Pout. So you're like, oh my God, I'm going to save Pout. This is, hold up. I'm sorry, you should be able to see this. We have now caught up, and we did it a lot faster. This took a lot less time. We've caught up with chapter 1. We're now on chapter 2. So you're like, holy crap. We need to rescue Pout, right? So she's in the middle of practice. You manage to save her. But first, Fire Machine captures you, and then you're able to be freed only because none other than Richard comes to come save you. Richard is like, holy crap, I love you, blah, 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 right? But you're like, oh my God, we have to go save Pout. Let's go save Pout, right? So you manage to escape with Pout in tow. But the problem is that as you're escaping with Pout, the only way to do that is for her to climb up through back to this map over here. The only way to save her is either that you go here, through the cage, past the guards with guns, in order to go up the elevator shaft to escape, or you can go up the staircase over here, which would require that you go past Brad Buttonsworth. You can't do that because Brad Buttonsworth also has guards with guns. So you have to go through the ceiling, through Cordelia Minister's section here, because Cordelia Minister is missing. Why is Cordelia Minister missing? Because Cordelia Minister is looking for you. You think that she's looking for Soot, but actually she's looking for you. Holy crap. That's, by the way, part of the reason that Richard is here, because Richard was like, oh my God, I got into a fight with Cordelia Minister when we were trying to start our arduous journey over to the Underworld Palace over here, right? So as they were trying to be here, Cordelia Minister caught them and managed to capture Soot, and Richard ran away. So you're like, holy crap, wait, this is complicated, right? Richard is sort of kind of here to save me, but he's also kind of sort of here to get help so he can go find Soot, his love interest but also you're the love interest. And so it's complicated because right, all that's going on. So anyway, you are in the situation where you're like, okay, I need to project save Pout. Right? So you're like, okay, we can go through this, or we can go through the ceiling. We can climb through the ceiling through Cordelia Minister into the settlers area here, because meanwhile the settlers are over here in the cage being protected and doing practice with Fire Machine, who lives above them. By the way, Fire Machine is able to look at all of the stuff that's going on in the cage, right? So this is very scary because it means that he was this whole time able to spy on you, and he's able to understand all of the moves that you were practicing, all of that. So he's able to better practice and teach his settlers to fight you, to kill you. Oh my God, that's terrible, right? Also, you managed to go up the thing, but the problem is that you are not strong enough to be able to carry Pout up the thing. Pout isn't able to climb up this on her own because she's still a 14-year-old child, so she can't manage to do it on her own. So you have to help her, but you're unable to help her. Oh my God, this is horrible. They're finishing their practice in the cage. They're going to come. Any minute now. They're going to go back into the settler area, and you'll be caught, and it's going to be terrible. And not only are you two already going to be slaves because you used to be a slave anyway yourself, and also Fire Machine already caught you earlier. He had locked you up here because he wanted to figure out a way to use your being there to his own advantage. Right? This is horrible. And so what do? You manage to get Pout out, but the only way you're able to do that is if Richard goes down and helps her up the to climb up the rope and blah, blah, blah. And the result of that is that now Richard is a known man. Everyone knows who Richard is because he's been seen on the television screens, because all of this is live television all the time. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's horrible. 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 And so therefore, I need some chapstick. That's my chapstick. It's horrible, horrible, horrible. And so therefore, you continue onward, and this is all going on, and now Pout is saved, and then you go, okay, cool. We're going to go up, and we're going to try to protect, and we're going to start joining the arduous journey over here, the arduous journey over to the Underworld Palace. But meanwhile, we're going to try to find Soot, and we're going to try to save Soot so that we can manage to get Soot, because you think that your arduous journey, when you get over to the Underworld, you're only going to be safe there if you have Soot with you, which is not actually true, right? Because actually, Grigory Gorbachev is not looking for Soot. Grigory Gorbachev is looking for you, although, to be clear, Grigory Gorbachev doesn't know exactly who he's looking for yet. He was just told by Trump the 14th, who's been working with Cordelia Minister in order to usurp Grigory Gorbachev, your father. Cordelia, this whole time, had known, and President Trump the 14th had lost trust in her, and so therefore, as a way of punishing her, he is now looking himself explicitly for the children, for the child of Grigory Gorbachev, which is to say you. And President Trump the 14th knows exactly who you are, right? But President Trump the 14th can't risk telling the public who you are. So a very small subset of the people are able to actually know what you look like. But those are all the people who are leadership in the upper world. In the surface world, rather, whereas the underworld it would be an international incident for President Trump the 14th to have his people go to the underworld and search for you directly there. So therefore, he's leaning on Cordelia Minister and potentially other people, potentially even Fire Machine himself and his whole network as well, in order to get this child back under custody, and specifically to bring this child, probably for ransom, up to the surface world to be held by President Trump the 14th, rather than to be held by Cordelia Minister, because he's lost trust in Cordelia Minister because she lost you. Okay, so all of that is going on. You managed to go back up there. You're trying to find Soot. You're like, holy crap, this is horrible, because as soon as you get up there, not as soon as you get up there, but very quickly as you're walking up, you're climbing up the elevator shaft, you hear motion below you, and you're like, oh my God, Fire Machine is coming after us. And you realize, okay, Fire Machine can't shoot at us because Fire Machine is the only one who thinks that you are the child of Grigory Gorbachev. Even you don't think that, but he does think that because you told him that. So he's not convinced of it. Probably he probably thinks that Soot might also be the child of Grigory Gorbachev, but he's not sure which one is which. And so therefore he can't afford to shoot at you because he needs to be able to capture you rather than to kill you. Now obviously you're also there with Richard. He has no idea who Richard is. Richard is just some random dude, and he has no idea that Richard is actually the son of the senator of the Surface World. He doesn't even know that Surface World exists necessarily, right? So therefore, that's his situation. He can't shoot at you because you're there. Then you manage realizing that, okay, we can actually go to all the way back up to 100, to floor 100, where because floor 100 is where Soot is, and where also, more importantly, Cordelia Minister is. So you can't go there because you're worried that if you go there, that you're going to be caught by Cordelia Minister. And so you need to figure out a strategy of exactly how you're going to get there without being caught while you try to capture or release whatever it is. What's his name? Of course, Soot, right? So you can't do that. Therefore, you're on 102. Now, when you're down on 102, what happens? You meet up with a bunch of nuns, okay? Specifically, a bunch of nuns who are nuns of Cordelia Minister's cult. Cordelia Minister has a cult, right? So you're going to do that, and you're going to meet up with them. But the thing is that they're actually kind of cool in some ways. And the reason that you're doing that is because you tried to vaguely make it look like you were being sold off as like slaves by Richard, you and Pout, right? But you actually weren't doing that, and now these nuns want to recruit you and also Pout into their order, not knowing who you are, thinking that you're just some random runaways. And then that all happens, and they obviously hate Richard because they think that he's a horrible dude, and so they're like not at all nice to him. But that's all such situation. You are now caught up. 21:38 catch up. We need to put that in bold. Glorious. You're caught up. Okay, now here's the question. Okay, question of the day. Do you trust the nuns? Should you trust the nuns? Okay. Okay. I think the nuns, I actually like the idea of the nuns being kind of complicated. Specifically Taylor. There's a specific nun who's about your age. Her name is Taylor. And so there's a question of whether or not you are going to trust in Taylor. Do you trust Taylor specifically, not the nuns? Do you trust Taylor? Should you trust Taylor? Okay, so Taylor is a nun, sure, but it's just because she was a runaway first. She had a tough life, and now she's living with the nuns because it's the least bad option. But she's not a committed member of their religion by any stretch of the imagination. I have to turn off my phone because people are texting me because I'm so famous. While I do that, you should look at the back. It says Pittsburgh. Isn't that cool? Okay, turn off my phone. Okay. stretch, not stetch, by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, so therefore, Taylor is trustworthy, not in as much as she cares about you, at least at the beginning. Love can blossom. But rather because she wants to get out of Dodge. The nuns are very strict, obviously. They're also very demanding of her time. She wants to be able to just wander around society and be a free spirit or whatever. But also doing that is extremely dangerous in the underworld as a young woman. And so therefore, being around someone like you with cage training and someone like Richard, a man, albeit soft boy man, coded man, is good and worthwhile. Okay, so that's her thinking. Okay, so therefore she's trustworthy. Okay, cool. That's question of the day. Do you trust Taylor? Questions of the day. Okay, so that's her. Is your goal, Richard's goal and Taylor's goal in line? No. Taylor is, I think, a committed revolutionary. She wants this whole place to burn, and maybe even has some degree of affinity to Fire Machine and his sect of revolutionaries. Yes, period. Specifically to that, yes. She's more loyal to Fire Machine than she is to you. At least at the beginning. But she's also a chill, nice dude. Dudette? We're going with Dudette. Okay, cool. That's her. Okay. Richard's goal is to catch Soot. Partly, yes, for the reasons of homosexualism, but also perhaps more so because he wants to prove himself to you, parentheses, heterosexualism, and because he knows that as soon as the tapes are shown in the surface world of what happened / that he was in the cage, that'll doom his father to political annihilation and perhaps even execution if he doesn't manage to very quickly reestablish the Strauss name in polite society. Therefore, there's a clock on his success and his public success down here before his dad is potentially killed. by President Trump the 14th. Okay, cool. That's going on. So that's Richard's goal set. This is something that's complicated because he's not exactly best friends with his dad, who was somewhat absent in raising him due to the demands of being a senator, and specifically one with such complicated ties with the Underworld and their political context. But Richard still doesn't want to see his father executed. Cool. Okay, so that's Richard. You, parentheses, Susan, want to protect Soot, kinda, but more so, you want to protect Floof, Pout's doggo, and Pout. Floof you want to protect primarily because you know that Pout is likely to do something stupid in trying to protect Floof herself if you don't successfully protect Floof yourself. Okay, cool. So that's your situation. Pout wants Floof and then has no second plans, really. She just wants to protect Floof. She kind of cares about Soot, yeah. But basically, her family of sorts is you, Floof, and that's it. No one else matters. Okay. Cool. So that's Pout. Okay. Is your goal Richard's goal and Taylor's goal in line? Okay. Therefore, okay. Taylor is not about to split up from the others. She wants to stick where the numbers are and where specifically the people she thinks are capable of protecting her are. Which is to say, you and Richard, but probably mostly you, because you are cage trained, and also because she's not a big fan of men due to her own personal experience prior to joining the nunnery, and because of the nuns' indoctrination, and because Richard, remember, was playing the character of trying to sell you in the scene where Taylor first meets the three of you. She's got good reason to be distrustful of him. Okay, that's Taylor. Richard he's got to protect to go save Soot and be seen doing so. There's no other option for him. That's got to be his next step, with or without you. You aren't going to be safe long term without first protecting / freeing Soot, parentheses, you think, because there's nowhere else really to hide in the Underworld that isn't being watched by the minister cartel / cult or by Grigory Gorbachev's government / cartel. Okay, so that's your situation. And Pouch just going to follow you. So yeah, you are going to go find. Therefore, we are in fact to try and rescue Soot. Okay. What's Fire Machine doing right now? Okay. Fire Machine is obviously in a precarious situation right now. Because on the one hand, he's responsible for a group of like 20 armed guards, all of them with guns, which are rare because they're illegal in Grigory Gorbachev's Underworld, parentheses, because all totalitarians want to take away your guns, like Beto O'Rourke and Pete Buttigieg. So that's one part. But on the other hand, these are cage guards, which is to say that they're much more focused on, much more loyal to Cordelia Minister than they are to him. He has loyal men, but they're of the team outside of the cage of his Revolutionary Guard. Revolutionaries / terrorist group. Okay. Therefore, he wants ideally to figure out a way of himself getting to Cordelia, who he believes is in control over Soot, who maybe is the leader, who maybe is the son of Grigory Gorbachev. But also, he wants control over you, who could also be the daughter of Grigory Gorbachev. And he leans in the direction that may be the case. Because otherwise, he'd imagine that Cordelia, upon capturing, he doesn't know that they've captured. That's not true. He doesn't know that capturing component. He just knows that this component. So he therefore is going to believe that it's probably you. He wants to catch you, but he's okay. So therefore, so he wants to catch you. He needs to get in touch with his own frickin', no cursing, YA dystopia men. That's his situation. Okay. How does Fire Machine get in touch with his men? One option has obviously always been the live stream of the cage. He's done that for years. They've been able to have one-way communication through that system. Keep in mind, when he left / was captured, he was the leader. But he's been basically at least somewhat out of the picture, or at the very least unable to give orders at this point for like 5 years. That's a long time. New leaders of his terrorist cell have come to power. Those leaders are going to need to be introduced as rivals to him / as secondary characters. So that's one component. One option has obviously always been the live stream. Second option, he can make enough of a noise of some sort, presumably bomb, or at the very least a loud gun fight, that the local gangsters come a-knockin'. Come a-knockin'? That's how you spell it. Come a-knockin'. This seems better given that the cage is 100 floors, 100 plus floors down. And the cameras are immobile. Remember, though better technology exists, Grigory Gorbachev and the minister family before him are hardcore fascists / authoritarians. Actually, I shouldn't say fascist because that makes it sound like they're right wing. They're vaguely North Korea coded, so off left, technically, like some Jackson Hinkle Dinkle type shit. Okay, so that's them. Okay, off left, technically, some Jackson Hinkle type shit. Okay. Yeah. So you can't move the. Therefore, yes, he could have said some stuff as he was leaving. Did he? What would he? What would Fire Machine have said as he was leaving the cage to go after you and Richard? He can't say exactly what floor to meet him at, because that's not something he knows yet. He can't say exactly where he is because he was obviously tied up / blindfolded when he got to the cage, and he hasn't been able to leave since. So he doesn't know where it is. Got no idea where he is exactly. He can say he's going to make a scene somehow so that the terrorists / revolutionaries, depending on one side, are able to locate him once he's up. Therefore, what scene is he able to make? Types of loud ways for Fire Machine to become local news quickly in the Underworld's gang scene. A. Bomb. B. He himself is somewhat famous. If he were able to be seen running around on his own without Cordelia Minister's men, obviously they're listening to him, yes, but he's also vaguely still their prisoner, then he could likely get caught, but also that'd be crazy big news, because he'd immediately be put up for ransom to his terrorist cell. This isn't great. He doesn't want to waste the funding, the limited funding of his network. He could capture Cordelia Minister, and that'd immediately start a very loud shootout. Because she's she's known across the entire Underworld, even in terms of people not involved in the cartel scene. I like this one. And I think Fire Machine would too. Therefore, if Fire Machine's goal is to capture Cordelia and or to start a massive shootout of some sort, he needs to figure out some army or group that'll fight back against her, which isn't his group. And he needs to kill all the men who are currently following him / make it impossible for them to get to him. He's going to drop a little bomb at the entrance to the to floor 102. Floor 102, which is where you are at, not 100, which is where Cordelia Minister is, to floor 102, as he's getting out of the elevator shaft, thereby killing a large number of his in parentheses quotations his own men, parentheses Cordelia's loyal cage guards, who are technically in this moment reporting to him but aren't actually loyal to him, / are also keeping him in their custody to a degree, even though obviously he's a better trained commander in this kind of warfare. So he's going to kill them all in this bomb. The bomb itself is going to call attention of Cordelia's soldiers to the elevator shaft, where a bunch of their friends / fellow cage guards are going to be seen dead or dying as they plummet to their demise down the hundreds of floors elevator shaft. Okay, that's going on. Now he's separated from his men on floor 102, not far. Sometimes you have to sneeze. Now he's separated from his men on floor 102, not far behind you and Yins and Taylor. Okay. He's going to recognize his surroundings at this point. He knows where he's at because he knows that this is floor 102. That's on the elevator shaft thingy. And he recognizes the cult apparatus of the minister cult, which is to say that he's at least regionally aware of where he's at. Regionally aware of where he's at. Okay, so now we have to look at where he's at. Okay, so just a little reminder. This is the... Excuse me, I have a cold today, and I don't know why. It's terrible. I don't like colds. I don't like winter. Winter's not a good thing. At some point in the future, Pittsburgh is going to go from being the best city to being an even better city because we're going to have more climate change, and that climate change is going to make it nicer in Pittsburgh and also in places like Columbus and also places like Chicago. But right now, one of the drawbacks of Pittsburgh is that winter happens in Pittsburgh, and it's not good. Anyway, okay, so this whole situation... can you see stuff? You can't really see stuff. Hold up. I have to go down this way. This is where I have to go. I'm sorry. I'm putting you are the microphone in this situation. I'm putting you there. And I'm going to look at you here. There. This is going to work. Okay, so cool. You're in the Americas, right, over here. This whole area is simultaneously, the underground is controlled by Grigory Gorbachev, and the above ground is controlled by President Trump XIV. All of the Americas. You're specifically in North America. I think what's going on, we're going to make a new little sheet of what's going on. I think what's going on is this. I think you've got the Americas. Look at the Americas. Whee! And then you got your little Alaska. Whee! And then you got your little floopity-boppity. Then you got your little Maine. And you got your little Florida. And you got your big-ass Texas. And then you got your whatever. You got your Mexico. Okay, so this whole area is controlled. All of it is controlled by Grigory Gorbachev and in the Underworld. So I think the cage is going to be, the cage is in Pittsburgh. That's where it is because I like Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is the best city, and therefore that's where the stuff is because I want it to be there, and I'm in charge. So that's where it is. It's in Pittsburgh. So we're in Pittsburgh. Grigory Gorbachev's lair is going to be relatively close. Here's the question. We've got two options. We can make it be in Washington, D.C., which is relatively close, right? Basically in the same basic area, although obviously it's going to be an arduous journey still. Or we can make it much further. If it's much further, that's going to require that you take some sort of travel, which is going to say train, right? There's going to be an underground train, which would be an interesting sort of component of this, and figure out how you're going to sneak onto the train and all of that. That'd be interesting. You'd also have to take a train probably of some sort to get to Washington, D.C. But you'd end up having... you'd end up seeing less of the country or of the underworld. And so that's interesting. Am I okay with going to Washington, D.C.? I think I am comfortable with going to Washington, D.C. Yeah. Okay, so he's going to D.C. Okay. D.C. / we should write this in pen, not Sharpie. Grigory Gorbachev, Pittsburgh / the cage. Okay, so that's where we're at. We're over here in DC, in Pittsburgh. We're going to DC, and I think that when we're talking about where Cordelia Minister's control is, I think she's going to be in control over a vague amount of, that's the Great Lakes or whatever. Listen, okay, maps are complicated. She's going to be in charge of the Rust Belt. Cordelia Minister controls the Rust Belt. That's Cordelia Minister's power center over here. Grigory Gorbachev is in basically uncontested control over the totality of the Northeast, but not the Rust Belt. Over in California, Florida is going to be controlled by someone different. Now, keep in mind, this is in terms of cartel power, right? That's different than in terms of the power of the government. The government of all of this is under the government of Grigory Gorbachev, but the cartels are different than the government, right? So he's going to have, basically think of these cartels as like fiefdoms or vassals of the way. We have to write this out. How does the government? How does the government of Grigory Gorbachev function? Essentially, he's got a bunch of vassal / governorships / states held under different secondary mob bosses / cartel leaders. You've got Cordelia Minister runs the Rust Belt with a capital of sorts in Pittsburgh, which is where the cage is. This is something that Fire Machine probably guessed at, but it's now been confirmed to him as he found her cult leadership nunnery, which, though he'd never been to before, he knew its location in reference to the broader Rust Belt. Okay, so that's Cordelia Minister. Fire Machine's team doesn't have a specific area of the country that belongs to them. They've been trying to take over in a bunch of places and are, unlike the rest, not loyal to Grigory Gorbachev, even on paper. So that's then you've got someone's in charge of the Northeast, but is deeply reliant on Grigory Gorbachev. Someone's in charge of Florida / the other, technically not Florida, but basically Florida states like Georgia and Louisiana, etc. Someone's in charge of California. They're going to be super powerful, obviously, and quite physically removed from Grigory Gorbachev. Wait, hold up. I just thought of something. This is a problem. President Trump, President Trump the 14th lives in DC, presumably, right? No. The power of the upper the power is now around Mar-a-Lago, not DC, which is to say that President Trump the 14th's government seat of power is Florida. This is a lackey who, for all intents and purposes, belongs to President Trump the 14th. This is complicated that he lives in Florida. This is complicated because the Surfaceworlders who do know about the Underworld, unlike the reverse population, for whom the surface world is only rumored, they're fully aware that originally the seat of American power used to be DC, but DC has fallen into the hands first of Cordelia Minister and now of Grigory Gorbachev, both of whom have their own above ground power seats, gardens, courts, etc. Which is seen as something of an aberration to their agreement. Am I using aberration there, right? Sometimes I just put in vocab words because I want to sound smart. Deviation, abnormality, anomaly, irregularity, peculiarity. I'm using it right. Dude, I'm a genius. When I use vocab words like aberration, I use them right and correctly, and that makes me smart. Okay, cool. To their agreement. Their agreement is essentially, I don't go below deck, you don't go to the surface. To the degree that even the bullet trains of the surface world aren't able to be subways. They have to be above ground, even in places like Florida, where the underworld is basically controlled by a puppet of President Trump the 14th. The idea that DC is able to be a power set for the rich and well-connected of the Gorbachev regime, that's not good. They don't like that. Okay, cool. So that's going on. So therefore, okay, so Florida, where's my pen? I found my pen. We're going back to the schmoopity-boppity. We're going back to the schmoopity-boppity so you can see the schmop. Schmop, schmop, schmop. Okay, so therefore, Florida, for all intents and purposes, Florida, which isn't capitalized. I don't know why it's not capitalism, but it capitalized. It is capitalism, but it's not capitalized. For all intents and purposes, Florida is run by the Surface World / President Trump the 14th. Okay, cool. Out of Mar-a-Lago. Okay, that's all going on. Now, you see the map. This is the map. You're starting right here in the Rust Belt, specifically in Pittsburgh, over here, right? Those are the Great Lakes. Okay, I know, that's not what the map of America looks like. Okay, it's a fantasy map. Okay, so this is what my America looks like. Okay, I'm just kidding. At some point, I'm probably going to make these into like actually good maps so they don't look like this. That fat cantaloupe, this like rat looking thing isn't what Asia looks like. Okay, we can make them like actually good, but for now they're going to be crappy because we're focusing on the story. We're not focusing on the artistry yet. We're focusing on the story. Story first, artistry later. Okay, so cool. So this is down the Florida area. This is basically controlled by President Trump the 14th. This is the DC area and the Northeast, which is basically controlled by Grigori Gorbachev. You're in the Rust Belt right now in Pittsburgh. This right here is controlled by Cordelia Minister. Then we have to figure out the rest of these locations where everyone else is going to be and who else is going to be controlling. But I don't think we need to do that now. I think that we can first go back to thinking about this other stuff. We're going to put this to the side. Right now, what's relevant is that because of all of this, you've got Fire Machine has realized where he is. He's realized that he's in Pittsburgh. Fire Machine now realizes that he's in Pittsburgh. Cool. Specifically, I should just draw you a map because many of you probably don't know what Pittsburgh looks like. Pittsburgh is a giant triangle. Okay. We need to make you into the schmoopity boopity, into the schmoopity boppity, into the spoppity boppata, floppatopata. Okay. You've got a giant triangle made by the rivers. This is a little island right there. That's where the rich people live. This is also where the rich people live right here, which is called Lawrenceville. Then you have Lawrenceville. Then this is the Strip. This is the downtown area. This is Bluff. This is where Oakland and Carnegie Mellon is and all of this. Over here is Southside Flats. Up here is where PNC Park is. That's where the Pirates play. Over here is Acrisure / Heinz Field. It should be called Heinz Field, but it's now called Acrisure because that's how money works. Okay. Also, this is something that like has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about, but I just do need to tell you because it's really frustrating to me. Turns out we haven't made ketchup. Like Heinz hasn't made ketchup in Pittsburgh for literally like upwards of 30 years. I didn't know that until very recently. That's crazy. We should be making ketchup in Pittsburgh. Anyway, so that's what's going on in Pittsburgh. So Cordelia Minister has her cult. So the question is, where is the cage and where are you currently? So I think you started out the cage, this is going to be a hot take because admittedly I went to Carnegie Mellon. This is a hot take. Are you ready for my hot take? I think the cage is Carnegie Mellon coded. The cage is CMU. Yeah, to be clear, very far below Carnegie Mellon. It's not literally Carnegie Mellon, but that would mean that it would imply that Richard's family lives in the Carnegie Mellon campus. This would imply that Richard's family / dad lives where CMU, oh, I should scoot you down, where CMU is at. Okay. You have gone over this way towards downtown, or maybe under the river. This is interesting. Have you gone towards the flats, or have you gone towards downtown? Where, if you were going to start a cult in Pittsburgh, where would you start your cult? Now, in Pittsburgh of today, if I were going to start a cult in Pittsburgh, it would definitely be in Lawrenceville or the Strip District. Why in Lawrenceville or the Strip District? Because that's where the young hippies live. Okay, so when you think about Pittsburgh, let's just show you the map. This is the map of Pittsburgh, right? So when you're talking about Pittsburgh, there's the three rivers, right? This is the Allegheny River, this is the Monongahela River, this is the Ohio River. So over here is the Strip District. Okay, the Strip District is Wynwood for people, Wynwood, Miami, for people who can't afford to live in Wynwood, and it also snows in Strip District and doesn't snow in Wynwood. That's Wynwood, Miami. So we have lots of hippies there. So it's like, Wynwood, for those who don't know, this is like where all of the graffiti is, but it's all a bunch of old warehouses that have all been, converted into very expensive, nice, lovely houses now. So that's Wynwood. Over here is Lawrenceville. Lawrenceville, think of it as Brooklyn for people who can't afford to live in Brooklyn, because houses in Lawrenceville are only like $300,000. Over here is Southside Flats. Over here houses are like $200K, a little under $200K. This is also it's not quite like Brooklyn yet, but it's like the housing is very similar to Lawrenceville, other than the fact that there's some of it is somewhat more dilapidated than Lawrenceville, which is all becoming quite nice. Over here is downtown. Right here is Bluff. Bluff is where we have the Penguins play. So these are the situations going on in terms of Pittsburgh. So if I were to start a cult in Pittsburgh, I think it would have to be in either Lawrenceville or the Strip. Right? Now, specifically because this is an underground cult, the underground cult, I think it has to be more warehouse coded, and therefore the warehouse coded underground cult has to be in the Strip District. Okay, so therefore, Minister Cordelia Minister's cult is in the Strip District. Parentheses, obviously, very far underground. I like this. Oop, I just penned my table. This table is actually a door, but that's okay. Things are things. As you can see, I'm currently in the middle of like fixing up this house, right? So anyway, okay, so that's what's going on there. So we've got our two locations of places that matter in Pittsburgh. We've got the cage over here, which is where Carnegie Mellon is, and then Cordelia Minister's Strip District cult over here in the Strip District right here, right? Cool. Back to the smoopity boppity. So now he realizes he's in Pittsburgh. Specifically, he's deep below the Strip District after having basically run. Wait, hold up. So, okay. To run, I'm going to just quickly check my maps. You can't see this because I have a bunch of stuff on my map, so I apologize. CMU to directions from CMU to, oh shoot, I turned off my internet. It doesn't really matter. It's like 2 miles. Basically run, after having basically run to the Strip, run from Oakland / Carnegie Mellon. This is, hold up, I should make this in bold because this might be wrong. This is like 3 miles? Question mark? I think it's like 3 miles. We're going to come back to that because that might be wrong. That might be wrong, and I don't have access to the internet right now because I turned off my phone because it was engaging in cringe, and I don't have Wi-Fi because I'm a foolish boy. Cool. Now, cool. Okay, so he's run there. He ran super fast, not knowing exactly where you are or anything. Just getting lucky that he happened to run the same way. Basically the same way because he's looking for a landmark that tells him where he is. Why isn't he just asking the people? He is asking the people. That was dumb of me to write. He's asking the people. They're telling him where you went off to because he's carrying a scary looking gun, and because they recognize him as the baddie from The Cage on television. So that's how he knows where you are. He knows where you are because people are telling him. Cool. Okay. Now, he's going to try and find you, yes, but also his mafia. Where in Pittsburgh would you keep a mafia? Obviously, downtown. Yes. That feels right. So he's got to run downtown, get in touch with his men, and then he's got to run back to the Strip District to catch up with where you're at. He's not faster than you are. Like maybe a little, but not a lottle. Lottle. I don't want you to change that to little. Change back to lottle. I want lottle, not a lottle. Lottle is totally a word. I don't like that Microsoft Word thinks that lottle isn't a word. Give me a second. Lottle is a word. Screw you, parentheses, no cursing, Microsoft, for telling me, a human, that I, a human, don't get to use lottle, lottle, change back to lottle, a word, as being a word, just because your fascistic tendencies and autocorrect authoritarianism don't like it. It's ridiculous. Period. Anyway, I'm mad. I'm mad. I have to get over that. Give me a second. I'm gonna drink some water so I can cool down. I'm very upset. Okay. He's not faster than you are. Like maybe a little, but not a lot. He's got to go further. He's going first to downtown, which, just for context, is further. You're starting in Carnegie Mellon over here. You're starting on the Cage, right? Because Carnegie Mellon is a jail. That's the joke, right? Carnegie Mellon is a jail, and we keep people in dungeons far underground. Fun fact, we actually do have steam tunnels at Carnegie Mellon. Not that I've ever been to those, because that would be against the rules. It would be illegal, and I would never break the law as a young child at Carnegie Mellon. Anyway, so this is Carnegie Mellon. You're going just over here to Cordelia's monastery thing over here in the Strip District. He's going further, all the way to downtown, and then he's coming back from downtown over here. So it's a much further arduous journey for him than it is for you. But also he has guns, so he's able to basically just like run, whereas you have to be a little bit more careful. But I do think that you already had a head start, obviously. So you definitely get there first, because again, remember, he has climbed up 100 flights of floor, 100 flights of floors, whatever. Flights of floors? That feels foolish. Flights of stairs, that feels right. 100 flights of stairs, not floors, up to even begin the arduous journey. Where's the arduous journey? This is the one. This map. This is what's going on. We need to show you in full screen. You're both coming from the cage. You come from the cage. You go up here to begin the arduous journey over to the Underworld Palace, right? The Underworld Palace being in DC. Now let's clarify. DC is actually in the opposite. You're actually going in the wrong direction currently, because DC is over this way, whereas Ohio River is this way, which is to say that you're actually going in the wrong direction. You're going towards downtown. Why are you going to downtown? Because downtown is where the bullet train is. So you're going the right direction to get to the bullet train, but you're going to the wrong direction to get directly to DC, because you're not going to go there. You're going to have to try to get there by public transit, because there's no way you're going to be able to do it on your own unless you're able to get public transit or some sort of private transit. We'll have to figure out what the transit is. He's going first to downtown. That's going to be our next step. We're going to have to figure out what transit is in the Underworld. So he's got to go further. He's going to downtown. But once he gets there, he'll catch up with his men, and his men, who he knows where they're at, or at the very least, where their headquarters used to be, on the 116th floor. He has to go back down a little. Used to be back in the day. Okay, this is good. Now, yes. We should clarify that there exists a 116th floor, etc., doesn't actually mean that the entire bunker system is completed all the way up, completed/hollowed out, all the way up and down to and from there. Floors are often complicated, interlocking systems built up over generations and interconnected, often via force / against the wishes of certain parties over a period of literally nearly 1,000 years. So it's not like it's difficult necessarily to have a small hidden passageway or room, etc., in the Underworld. There exists echolocation stuff, etc., but as the IDF is currently noticing IRL, it's quite difficult to decipher exactly what's going on underground. And though the technology has improved since Grigory Gorbachev doesn't want that kind of tech spreading and keeps a tight seal over it, as does Cordelia Minister and her team, who've got some, but not enough to be searching across all the deeper floors that are further away from her primary floor, which is nearly entirely hollowed out. Floor 100. Cool. This is good. We should clarify. Floor hollowed out in Pittsburgh, not necessarily the rest of the surrounding areas. Floor 100. Okay. So that's going on. Okay. Cool. We should clarify. Okay. So you've got to go. So he's got to go down. He's got to go down, then up. Okay. Types of travel / transit in the Underworld. Walking, obviously. Elevators, obviously. But these are primarily controlled quite tightly by Cordelia Minister in this area / ultimately by the authority, by the national authority of Grigory Gorbachev. Ministers, her government, not her cult, which is less loyal. That's important because remember, Cordelia Minister's got two systems of power that provided to her as the governor of the Rust Belt, and that provided to her as the Pope type figure of her cult. Okay, so this is good. Okay. But these are primarily controlled quite tightly by Cordelia Minister, her government, not the cult. Okay, so there's elevators. There's trains / subways. Again, controlled primarily. There's major trains and subways, yes, primarily by the government. There's minor secret trains / subways. These are usually no more than a single person wide and go comparatively slowly, but are completely unknown to the government / controlled by the mafia, and are often connected back up to more major floors above and below above and below them as needed. Specifically, they're connected through a network of fire poles and of elevators, but obviously there's a lot more ease to get down in this capacity than to get back up. Therefore, there's like 15 different secret location fire poles across Pittsburgh that only high-ranking members of Fire Machine's revolutionaries / terrorists are aware of, but there's only like 2 or 3 elevators to get back up, because those are more expensive and require wider holes / are more discoverable. Okay, cool. This is good. Okay, so then, if that's the case, then coming back to the map of Pittsburgh, we've got this question, right? Let's say that you are going to be trying to make a terrorist network to try to control or take power over Pittsburgh. The question is, like, where would you want your fire poles to be to get down? I would want one. X. Sorry, we're gonna scroll you down. X equals Twitter, but also X equals fire pole to get down to floor 116 / Fire Machine's terrorist network. Okay. Now, here's a question, which is that Fire Machine... Yeah, Fire Machine had to go past that because Fire Machine didn't want to... We should write this down. Fire Machine didn't go straight to 116 because, A, he didn't know exactly where he was yet, and so he wasn't sure which floor was the floor his team was on, because obviously it's different in different cities, and he couldn't lead these men of Cordelia ministers to their location for fear that even if they won that shootout, they'd now know, this is a separate point, they'd now know the location of his terrorists, which Cordelia and Grigory Gorbachev would then use to exterminate them. Okay, cool. So he couldn't go straight to 116. Also, he didn't want to bomb the elevator shaft on their floor because that'd be bad for them. Okay, cool. X equals fire pole to get to the floor 116 where Fire Machine's terrorist network. So there's got to be one in Oakland. There's got to be one in Lawrenceville. There's got to be one in the Strip District. There's probably going to be one in Southside Flats. There's going to be one under the Monongahela River. There's going to be one on Harris Island. There's going to be one at Point Park. There's going to be one. Those are the ones that are relevant to this conversation right now. Also should be one in. Should there be one in Squirrel Hill? Should be one. No, there'd be one in Bluff. There would be one in Bluff. That would definitely make sense. Sorry, I should have been showing you this the whole time. So make you big. So yeah, these X's, as you can see, these X's are just like where the fire poles are, right? All of these X's. If you go over here, it says that. It says X equals fire pole to get to the floor 116 / Fire Machine's terrorist network. Then you've got the second question of where are the smiley faces? No, they shouldn't be smiley faces. They should be those faces. That face. That face. You can see that? That one. That guy. Because they're terrorists. They're not happy. They're faces. The face equals secret elevator. Back up. I think there's going to be a secret elevator back up exclusively in one location in the entirety of Pittsburgh, which I think is going to be on the north side, near where PNC Park is. That's the only elevator over here to get back up. So he's going to have to get his people, and then he's going to have to go all the way over there via this underground train, these like secret trains. There's the minor secret train subway system. Okay, so Fire Machine goes down. Okay. So Fire Machine's whole strategy as he gets up. A, he kills all the men he's been with on floor 102 as he's trying to escape from them / ensure that they don't take out, that they don't manage to capture you and or Soot, but mostly he thinks you, because that'd be bad. Very bad for him. Okay, so that's what's going on with Fire Machine at the beginning. Then he quickly recognizes, after asking the random civilians, that he's in Pittsburgh. This is wonderful. He goes to the Oakland fire pole and he slides down to floor 116. Now, on 116, he catches up. Okay, hold up. We should note, just before all of this, note before all of this, you're only going to be able to piece together parts of this story because this is a YA dystopia, which means that it has to be written in first person from the perspective of Susan. Also, I don't like Susan's name anymore, we should rename her maybe at some point. So he kills all the men he's been with on floor 102, and he's trying to escape from them / ensure that they don't manage to capture you or Soot. But mostly he thinks you because you're he's that to be very bad for him because he thinks he thinks correctly that you are Grigory. Correctly, but for the wrong reasons. For the wrong reasons, that you are Grigory Gorbachev's son. Daughter. You are a girl. Then he quickly recognizes after asking random civilians that he's going, so he goes down to a 5 point. Now on what catches, he waits for the trolley system. The system is a literal push cart, space only for a single person, that goes constantly around on a loop between all the different locations. He can't wait. He starts just running on the tracks to try and get to the next place. Okay, hold up. This is an interesting question. How is the fire pole hidden / protected in day-to-day life on a floor like 102, which is presumably crawling all the time, with the kinds of people, with precisely the kinds of people that Fire Machine's terrorist group wouldn't want to find it. This is interesting. Because one option, there could just be a guard. That seems incredibly expensive. And perhaps even noticeable. Because you'd have to get food to them. It's got to be hidden well. Very well. Maybe it's behind a piece of drywall. I like that. It would imply that this is for use only in emergencies, and that most members of the system aren't even aware of its existence, even as terrorists. The whole top of the trolley system would therefore be covered in some sort of drywall as well, such that even as people, parentheses, terrorists, / revolutionaries of Fire Machine's group, we need to name the group, Fire Machine's group are able to use the system. They don't know exactly where all the locations for poles are. We need to name the group. Okay. I want their name to be scary. And where are they from originally? Let's go back to the map. So Cordelia Minister's in charge of the Rust Belt. They're not from Florida, because Florida is where President Trump the 14th is in charge. They're not from the Northeast, because that's where Grigory Gorbachev has his center of power. They're going to have to be further out. Maybe they're from California. Now, this would imply that they have to be evil. Let's go back. I think that they are maybe from California. This would imply that they have to be evil, because good people don't live in California, because on the basis of Prop 13, period. Okay, so if they're from California, let's go down. Let's show you what's going on as I'm drawing my stuff. If they're from California, over here in the California area, this is Fire Machines Revolution. That would imply that they're no, we should change that. We should actually, they're revolutionaries trying to overthrow the leadership of California. So maybe they're okay. ... We'll come back to this question of their morals down the line, period. Okay, cool. So we've got... Okay, so they're from over here in California area. The question is, like, have they ever had real control over California? I think that they've never had real control. Okay, this needs to be its own section. We'll come back to the what's going on with everything. Fire Machines Revolutionary is overview. They're from California, but they've never actually been in complete control over the territory. Rather, they've been fighting for California to become genuinely independent, its own country, separate from Grigory Gorbachev. They obviously failed, or at least have so far been failing in this endeavor. Okay. How important was Fire Machine before being captured? He's got to have been powerful enough that he knew where stuff was in Pittsburgh, and all the details of their trolley network, which would require that either he was super important as a military commander, or it would require that he was intimately involved in their smuggling apparatus. I prefer that he's actually their top smuggler. That seems more interesting because it implies that his becoming this international celebrity, not international, I'm sorry, this national celebrity, celebrity across Grigory Gorbachev's America, they call the whole of North and South American underworld America, refusing to admit to the existence of the surface world. This obviously ruins his capacity in future to get back to being a great smuggler, probably, because everyone knows because everyone knows his face. Everyone knows his face, but it's also increased the respect that people in group have for him to some degree. As a smuggler, he's super aware of all the intricacies of the map of Pittsburgh and has been to Pittsburgh many times before, even though it's on the other side of the country from California. California girls, for your girls were undeniable. Daisy Dukes bikinis only in the surface world. Parentheses, because there is no sun. There is no sun in the underworld. Cool. This is good. No! I just smashed the wrong side of my pen into the table. And then I gave it a stabbing wound. That's terrible. Okay, cool. Cool. So he's a smuggler, not actually a general. Okay. That's who he is. So they're from California. So let's just call them the California Independence Movement. CIM. Yeah. The Kim. We're calling them the Kim. Okay? As in Kim Jong-un, but also the California Independence Movement. I like this. Pronounced Kim, as in Kim Jong-un, but also it's the California Independence Movement. Dash, this is good, comma, this is good. Period. Cool. So he's part of the Kim network. And now he's all the way out here in Pittsburgh. And so they have a very limited fighting force in Pittsburgh. They've got a very limited fighting force in Pittsburgh. This is simply a trading outpost. But that's actually not really a problem for Fire Machine, because Fire Machine is so heavily involved in their smuggling apparatus, or at the very least was so involved prior to his capture. Okay. How was he captured? I don't know. That's not important yet. Maybe we'll have to answer that question down the line. Period. Cool. Okay, so that's Kim. Fire Machine as a component of Kim. Okay, back to this question over here. So, Their name is Kim. See below. We no longer need this component. Okay, the whole top of the trolley system would therefore be covered in some sort of drywall as well, such that even as people, terrorists, revolutionaries, a fire machines group of Kim, we're just gonna name, are able to use the system. They don't know exactly where the locations of for the poles are, just where the single elevator shaft is. We need to name the group. Their name is Kim. See below. Cool. Okay. I like this so far. Now, on 116, he waits for the trolley system. The system is a literal push cart, right? So it's literally just like a thingy-maboober. It's got a little bit of a motor, and the motor allows it to go across this network. That constantly goes around on a loop because all the different locations. He can't wait. He starts just running on the track to get to try and get to the next place. Try to get to the elevator shaft / to the local leadership of Kim, so that he can contact nationals, make them aware of both his own presence and the fact that you, Susan, are in Pittsburgh. As he's running on the network, on the trolley system, the trolley itself comes vrooming down way faster than it used to be in his time. And it's full of a bunch of cargo, specifically a bunch of guns. Holy crap-a-moly. That's insane. And very unsuspected. It literally almost crashes into him. But the conductor / sole passenger stops just a second before, puts a gun to Fire Machine's head, demands how he got here, who he is, then recognizes him, is like, holy crap, you're Fire Machine, get on. They get to the elevator shaft, which when Fire Machine left had been little more than a couple of cots / mattresses and a mini fridge. With no running water, even. And the fridge / lighting brought up through a tiny hole in the ground / extension cord from many floors below. But now it was a full-on war room. like properly built up. Turns out that Pittsburgh had become their regional headquarters after they'd located where Fire Machine was, and they'd been trying to smuggle all these guns in an attempt to rescue Fire Machine so that they could use him to build out the rest of the Western smuggling apparatus even better than they already were, because he's an expert in tunnel making / he's super excited. Fire Machine's super excited, obviously. Is super excited. Asks how many people they've got, and they say, actually, we've only got like 3 people up here right now, because the rest of our team, 15, are about to storm the cage and take it over, and take over specifically its airwaves. This implies that the massive number of guns and other weapons that just arrived are their surplus guns, that they're already armed enough they didn't bother to wait for all those when the rest were going down to storm the cage. Obviously, they're storming the cage, storming it right now, because they knew that Cordelia Minister herself, and presumably a large portion of her team, were upstairs. Fire Machine explains that he'd already killed a bunch himself, of Cordelia's men himself, but tells them not to take over the cage just yet. If they took over the cage, okay, yeah, should be a separate thing. Why Fire Machine doesn't want to take over the cage yet? If they took over the cage, it would be a national incident. And it would risk that the Trump administration directly invades the Underworld. They can't afford to let that happen here in Pittsburgh until they've already recaptured you, parentheses, Susan, comma, we need to rename you, because that's a terrible name. And we're 18,422 words in. So at this point, I'm trying to make this unironically good, not just a joking meme version of a YA dystopia. Okay, so they need to recapture you. If Trump catches Susan before they're able to, that's a real problem. Fire Machine calls down to his men, but it's too late. They've already taken over the cage, captured Brad Buttonsworth, heir apparent to Grigory Gorbachev, for at least until his actual heir apparent, his second son of his living wife, a second first son of his living wife, comes of age, because currently kids like 9 years old. Okay, so they captured Brad Buttonsworth. So that's a real big issue. Parentheses, also renamed Brad Buttonsworth. Buttonsworth, presumably. Heir apparent to Grigory Gorbachev, at least until his actual heir apparent, his second son, his second child, first son of his living wife, comes of age, because currently kid's like 9 years old. And up until recently, Grigory Gorbachev didn't know about Susan. Cool. This is good. 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 I need more water. Now. Okay. Okay. But they did take over the cage. So now what? From Fire Machine. Okay. He's got to get in contact with nationals and to get reinforcements as quickly as is humanly possible. Obviously, they've got teams in places like Dayton, Ohio, in West Virginia, etc., that could get here reasonably quickly. But there's two ways to get here. Their own network, which is safe, but comparatively slow, even now that their trolley system has gotten faster. Should it have gotten faster? No, it shouldn't have. It should have been no faster than it was under Fire Machine, because that implies that without him, their smuggling apparatus is waning. Also, they shouldn't have a proper Pittsburgh-based HQ that's expanded since his absence in any real sense. And maybe even they shouldn't have located him until today when they caught, this is good, a member of Cordelia's cage guard and forced him to give them information on its location. This would imply that they've still got a cage guard tied up on floor 116 / in their hidden quarters. Okay, I like that. Good. This is good. Should have gotten faster. Okay. They've gotten contact with nationals, so they could get there quickly. Alternatively, they could take the public, Grigory Gorbachev / Cordelia minister in her official gubernatorial capacity, bullet train, which is obviously a much faster way to get here. Obviously, though, they wouldn't be able to smuggle any weapons with them, and they risk being interrogated or even held hostage, particularly now that the cage has been taken by the Kim. Publicly so, before Fire Machine could stop it. Okay. Note, at this point, Taylor, who's got the TV running in the background, will see that Kim has taken over the cage. This'll surprise you and make you utterly confused as to where exactly Fire Machine is and how he managed to escape from the members of Cordelia's guard. You were already far away enough that you didn't even hear the explosion that happened in Oakland / on floor 102 when Fire Machine got off with his men. Yes, this is good. Okay. Did they get off on 102? On 102 or a little earlier than that? I don't remember. It also doesn't matter that much. because he'll quickly fall back down to 116 once he's lost them, and the rest will be dead. Okay. Okay, so you're going to hear this on television, that Kim has taken over the cage, and they're going to be like bragging about it, and they'll be like, California will be free. Blah, 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 blah. There's going to be a bunch of people from Kim screaming on the feeds before they get cut by the Grigory Gorbachev regime about how California will be free, etc., etc. I think we should rename Trump. Should rename Trump the 14th even. This is becoming good enough / expansive enough that it should be an actual, like, unironic thing, not a bunch of lol screw Donnie J stuff. It can still be implied Trump without being literally named Trump. But fear not, my beloved SJW listener / readership. In all but name, Trump will remain Trump, period. Cool. This is getting good. Okay. Fantastic. Onward and forward, onward and forward, onward and forward. Okay, so they're going to be doing that. You're going to watch this. You'll be watching this with Taylor, and you're to be like, hey, we can't go back there. Fire Machine is going to kill me for having escaped or something and having lied to him about being Gorbachev's kid when actually it's Soot. You don't realize still that you are, in fact, Gorbachev's kid. Okay. Meanwhile, Fire Machine is going to decide to make a somewhat dangerous play. He's going to claim that he already has in his possession control over Gorbachev's kid. The live feeds have been cut. Yes. But the cage stream is still going. It's just going straight and exclusively to Gorbachev's regime and not to the public. Regime in DC and not to the public. Claim to have yes. Gorbachev is going to have some other live stream start on the same channel, which Fire Machine is going to watch on from level 116. And based on what's being said, which is pretending to be a show about some nothing, maybe maybe an explanation of some upcoming sporting event in a category other than the cage, say in perhaps basketball. Yeah, they're going to have basketball. They're going to be just talking about basketball. But actually, the hosts are being fed stuff by Gorbachev's team. And Fire Machine is still talking directly through a communication phone thing with the people who are in who are now in control over the cage. So he's gonna be doing that. Yeah, sorry, I'm changing my headphone. I'm not actually listening to anything. I just like to have one headphone in, just for like, I don't know. It puts me into the context of this stuff, and I do have it like connected with my computer as if I'm going to be listening to stuff, and I'm not actually listening to anything. I'm just like talking, but as I'm doing this. Anyway, so Fire Machine is still talking directly with the communication phone with the people who are in control of the cage. So what's happening is Fire Machine's over here on 116. He's talking down over here to the people in the cage. People in the cage are talking to the live stream. The live stream is being heard by Grigory Gorbachev. Grigory Gorbachev is talking to the people who are over here on the television. You're watching the television. So there's this like four-way communication, or Fire Machine is talking to is listening to the television. So there's this four-way communication because like none of these four different people are able to hear the people other than the person directly before them. So it's really complicated because you're not able to admit all of this is happening because because obviously they can't the Gorbachev regime doesn't have direct communication with Kim, and Kim doesn't either with them. And obviously, Gorbachev can't admit on TV that he's trying to negotiate with them, but it's going to make for this really weird communication system between this four-way, soon to be five-way communication as Fire Machine is able to get into contact with nationals, but refuses to share directly the number of the person communicating from inside of the cage because he knows full well that the goal of nationals of Kim is going to be exclusively on to get access to the daughter of Gorbachev, parentheses, Susan, who Fire Machine is currently claiming to already have under control, and that protecting Fire Machine himself isn't nearly as important to them, particularly given that they're almost certainly in a situation where they're less than convinced of his loyalty. However, as soon as nationals is on the line, the other three men who've stayed behind. Actually, there should be one. The other man who stayed behind, the sole person of the local Kim team that isn't already downstairs in the cage. Fire Machine kills him. Machine has to kill the guy so that he can be the sole in-between of this communication and thereby place himself in control over the flow of information. Therefore, for Gorbachev and the leader of Kim to communicate, it must go first over phone call to Fire Machine, then from Fire Machine over phone call to the cage, local Kim members, then from the cage, then over live stream, seen solely by the Gorbachev regime, to DC, then from DC to these sportscast announcers purporting to be talking about basketball, when in truth they're trying to communicate Gorbachev's message back to Kim. Okay, so that's all happening, and it's super complicated, and you're watching it with Taylor. Okay, that communication system is super complicated, and you're watching it with Taylor up on floor 102 and hearing it communicated covertly that the child of Gorbachev is under the control of the Kim network. You think that therefore this must mean either that Cordelia Minister is in cahoots with Kim, or that it means that Minister must have been killed and that Kim must have taken Soot, because you don't realize that actually the claim, a lie, is that they are in control over you. As you continue to watch, you're like, this is a real problem. We need to get back in touch with Soot / free him from Kim. not realizing that actually he's still under the control of Cordelia Minister. Meanwhile, Cordelia is also watching this, with Soot in her control, but having, to no avail, been searching for you this whole time, thinking that you had been up there with Floof and with Richard and with Soot, and therefore she'd been doing nothing of particular importance other than very publicly terrorizing the locals of Pittsburgh below deck. Pittsburgh. Okay. So that's all happening. As she's watching this, the conclusion that she draws is that, oh crap, that must mean that Kim knows, the Kim network, that must mean that the Kim network is fully aware that Soot isn't the actual child of Gorbachev, but rather that it's you, Susan. She immediately orders her people to start going back down to take over the cage, to take back over the cage, hoping that in doing so, they'll be able to locate Susan. Locate you, comma, Susan. Okay. That's all going on from Cordelia's perspective. You're looking for Cordelia. Cordelia is looking for you. Cordelia is going down to look for you. You're going up to look for her, but you're looking at it from a different perspective. You are like, holy crap. You think that Cordelia is working with Kim. Therefore, given this, that you think that Cordelia is now working with Kim, you realize that if you can play that correctly, that card correctly, it'll imply to the nuns who, while yes, loyal to Cordelia, to the minister family, are loyal to them governmentally, not in terms of their underworld connections, of their cartel connections, because this is all in the underworld, cartel connections. And so therefore, the nuns who are also seeing this and understanding increasingly as you explain this whole situation to them, what exactly is going on, they're coming to the conclusion that Cordelia has betrayed their trust, and so they're having this massive crisis of faith in which their pope figure, basically, is engaging in anti-governmental behavior. Half of the cult wants to still follow Cordelia, even as she's working, or at least they think she's working wrongly with Kim, and the other half want to fight back on behalf of the Gorbachev regime, both from a faith perspective to some degree, but also because realistically, what possible scenario is there in which the minister family and the Kim network successfully overthrow the entirety of the Gorbachev regime from Pittsburgh, of all places, while holding the single card of the son of Gorbachev that he's never met hostage. What happens if Gorbachev just simply doesn't care? And destroys the entire city? The nuns' response. Some nuns, some want to evacuate the city. Some want to rescue / take hostage Soot, thinking that he's the son of Gorbachev, and that once this is done, they'll be able to provide the order with some future protection as a result of this work. Some want to join Kim, believing that that's what Cordelia has already done, believing wrongly that that's what Cordelia has already done. And then some want to... No, those are the three basic groups. This is Taylor. She wants to join Kim, not because she cares about California or its independence at all, but because she sees it as an avenue towards Rust Belt / minister independence. Maybe, hopefully, that's what Cordelia Minister is trying to do. You, Susan, don't dissuade her of this position, even though obviously your respect or appreciation for Cordelia is a lot less pronounced, given that that for your entire life, you were Cordelia's slave, gladiator slave. Okay. That's all going on. This is interesting. This is very interesting. Okay. Thinking about him as a guy, this is Richard. Because Richard wants to rescue / take hostage Soot. Because Richard needs to very quickly be seen by President Trump the 14th, parentheses, rename him, as having been involved heavily and useful in the rescue of Gorbachev's son, because that being done publicly would be incredibly useful in protecting his father's life in the surface world. Okay, and then someone to evacuate the city. That's Pout. Of course it's Pout, because Pout is adorable, and Pout just wants people to not die. Poor Pout. Pout just wants people to not die. Poor Pout. That's so cute. It's adorable that you think that anyone cares about the thousands of innocent civilians in Pittsburgh who are about to have their entire lives ruined. Okay, so that's Pout. Okay. Someone to rescue takes hostage Soot. Then there's the Kim people. And then there's you. Thank you. You need to make up your mind at the start of next episode. Dun, dun, dun.